First thing I'm going to do is clean up my bench, get all the glue spots and anything stuck to my bench from my last build. Get it all cleaned up and sweep my bench off. And then I've already got my lines drawn from the last wing I did. I guess I can prove that it's good because, okay, there goes my camera. There it is. Because those wings are on the airplane and flying. Next I'm going to check, see how flat my table is. Not that it matters so much for the way I'm building it. I just kind of like to see how far it's out. If it's real bad, I might try to shim some stuff up, but you can watch the far end going up and down. So you see it's kind of higher. It actually just drops off right here near this corner a little bit. But the reason I say it's not going to matter is the wing is so flexible and shapeable once you get the ribs glued onto it that once we get the wings or the ribs glued onto it, then we're going to raise it up and get it perfectly square and straight. The squareness you definitely want when you're gluing the ribs on. But as far as the flatness goes, like this, that's not so important because it's totally flexible. But its squareness, you definitely want it perfectly square when you're gluing the ribs on. And incidentally, I did have this table perfectly flat, or what I thought was perfectly flat, pretty close, several years ago. But with every season, it just changes a little bit from moisture in the air. The next big challenge is to see if we can even get these ribs slid onto the spars. Now the front spar should go somewhat easy, but the rear spar is the one that I cut to fit right on, and well, I guess I didn't do much different with the front one. No, it's not too bad. It's sliding on pretty easy. And now the rear spar, it's kind of a tight fit. There we go. And you just got to shimmy it the whole way down. I'll probably work from both ends. And, or not probably, I will work from both ends. So that actually slid down there pretty quickly, so I'm going to go ahead and just, I'll put it in fast forward and go ahead and show you sliding the rest of them on. Notice how it raises up this end of once you get the first one on, as long as it's not past the middle, you know, it's going to raise this end up. It makes it a lot easier to slide them on. Now it's not typical to be this difficult to slide on. For the average builder because they tell you to go ahead and leave a space here and then just fill it in with some kind of filler, you know, a geodetic, or if it has a little bit of an angle, an angled block. But me, I cut these ribs so that they're a tight fit, and of course being wood, some are going to be bigger, some are going to be smaller, and then I put the angle on this back side so that it goes right along with the rib instead of being loose in there and then having to slip in a piece of little chip of wood. Now here's something I forgot, is you can't get that rib past there the way I do it. You can't get this rib past the buildup for the rear strut. So we're going to actually have to stop here, and then I'll slide the it'll be 2 ribs. I'll have to slide 2 ribs from the other side and then slide all of these up. Well, we got all the ribs slid on, so it's time to go to church, and I'll be right back. Well, the end of my bench, where I had my nice perfectly straight line drawn from my last wings, it got painted on, so probably by my grandchildren, because I wouldn't do that. But so now I've got to get a new straight edge drawn on that, and hopefully this here will work. But I have enough line showing that I should be able to tell if it's off at all, or actually just use the line to verify where this one is. Yeah, it's running right along it. So I've got the ribs lined up on the front side pretty well. I've got them all drawn in against this front edge, and all the ribs, and then the spar drug up against the main beam there, and the ribs, and then I put clamps to hold it relatively in alignment this way, and the root of it set right at the edge of the rib, right there, with the rib clamped on it at a square line, the root rib. And that's it. Now we're going to start from the back, and we're going to glue the trailing edge on. Well, I was about to get ready and to start fitting this, and I realized that I made a big mistake that would have been very difficult to fix, and that is I didn't slot my trailing edge. That trailing edge needs an 1/8 inch slot, an 1/8 inch deep, about an 1/8 inch from the bottom. And there you have it. That's why everybody calls the strips geodetic. The prints call it geodetic. Well, the top, what they call geodetic, but which is really strips of wood, glues into the slot, so it's not an 1/8 of an inch from the bottom, it's more central, and the bottom geodetic glues against the top geodetic, just like in this picture here. I'm quite amazed at how much I forget from previous builds, each time even. I remember thinking to myself, it's better to cut the slots slightly wide so that you can get them into the ribs into them, and then shim them tight with real thin strips, which I have plenty of, even much thinner than that, almost paper thin. It's much easier to do that than it is to shave these, each one of them. And furthermore, I didn't do that before all of this, and then I'd have to do each one individually to a slot. I remember now that I should have cut these slots about, maybe closer to 300 thousandths, because many of these are 290 thousandths wide. 270 to 290, and the reason they're so wide, even though I cut most of them exactly a 1/4 inch or slightly over, is because when you get that little piece of wood in between, that little reinforcement piece, when you get that down in there, that spreads that wood a little bit. So I'm not going to show you my repair, because I'm simply going to reset it up like I did before, like 2 videos ago or something like that, and slot these, and then of course rip a slot lengthwise, about 1/8 of an inch deep. I got my slot cut, got my notches opened up wide enough that these are all fairly snug. A couple of them might need a little shim, and I have some real thin shim stock to go into it. So we're all ready. Mix some glue. I'm quite upset. I've been using one stir stick for about, about 5 months I've been working on this. And I or somebody threw it away. But I'm going to try this here thinner stir stick. See how I like that, at least for the small stuff applications. And one other thing, make sure your T88 is not the part A, the clear stuff. Make sure it's clear, crystal clear. No bubbles in it, no crystals in it, not cloudy. Okay, so try to force these in here extra hard, and then, well, of course I didn't bring any clamps back here. And that's the next thing, is force them in and then clamp them down. Clamp the trailing edge down, and then if you need a wedge, like this one needs a wedge, this one's fairly snug, this one's pretty snug, this one's real snug, and the last one, of course the other one has the last one has just a side notch like this, but the next to the last one, it needs a slight wedge too. And the wedge, you also put glue on it. And I've done this a few different ways, but this is the easiest way. Take a wedge that's big enough, just smear it, or extra long I mean, smear it with glue, stick it in there. Now let me grab clamps. Here's the one that needed a little bit of a wedge. Not much of one, but now clean that up as soon as it dries. The rest of them good and tight, had to be pushed in. This one here, now I'll get a clamp, get something to clamp this in, but first I've got to get my 8-footer and butt it up against this and run it out the rest of the length. Now, of course, right here, there's no glue joint. The 8-footer just butts up against the 5-footer right there. So now the 8-footer, the whole trailing edge is now glued in, clamped up, and you can see the little tiny wedges that I put in. This one here needed a little thin one at the top just to make it finish it up. So everything's in good and tight. Then on the end I have a little pusher holding the end rib in against that. And we're done for tonight.